Hello and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Mr. Mark Van De Carr. Mark, thanks for coming back.
Absolutely.
So last time you were here, people posted questions on Facebook and stuff and emailed in. Mm-hmm. This time, like a gajillion people posted questions.
Okay.
And so we got a lot of car chat to do with you. And,
sounds good.
Yeah, I hope so. And some of the questions range from, sort of the absurd to the solid. I'm going to start with one of the absurd ones just to set the tone here.
Okay.
Mr. Jonathan B, in this case, the B stands for Burkhart from Rhinebeck, says, why do catalytic converters sometimes smell like poop in the car, especially when it's raining?
It's because of the sulfur in the fuel.
Really?
Yes, it's because of the sulfur in the fuel, and also the mixture isn't running right.
So how do
if
you...
If the car runs too rich and the sulfur content is high, that's why it smells like rotten eggs.
So there's sulfur in unleaded gasoline?
Yes, yeah, certain amount.
Huh.
Not crazy amount, but a certain amount.
Why?
But if it's not running too rich, you don't smell it.
And was there sulfur in leaded gasoline?
That I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't think so.
Because I'm just wondering if they put that in when they took the lead out.
You got
no
me.
idea. Oh, God. Yay, stumped already.
You have to have Ed ask Exxon.
Ask a real old guy.
Right.
Well, so how do you
fix...
That would
be me.
Oh, well. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been?
50 years.
50
a little
years.
Over 50 years.
So you got a little bit of experience.
Little.
Yeah. So how do you fix that? You said if the mixture's off.
The more than likely the mixture's off, or if there's an air pump, the air pump isn't working right. It also could be that the converter is borderline. So what happens, it doesn't, when you first start the car, the converter has to get up to a certain temperature before it starts to work. Everybody's experienced check engine lights with a CAT code, okay? CAT efficiency code. Okay. When you get a CAT efficiency code, it doesn't mean that the converter isn't working necessarily. Okay. A lot of times it means that it's just not coming on fast enough. Okay. As they get older, they get coated with stuff and whatnot.
How long do they usually last?
They can last the life of the car. It depends. It depends on how clean the car runs. If you keep the car tuned up and maintain it, that's one of the things with keeping them tuned up. If they run dirty, the converters get clogged sooner. When they start to burn oil, that's a problem.
Okay.
Because the oil will leave a coating on the converter.
Right.
It can be burned off. They also sell cleaner. You throw in the gas tank.
Right.
And then you go out and you run it to death. And it gets hot enough to clean it off.
To burn off all the...
The reason
stuff.
I know this, we were doing rallycross, and a friend of mine wanted me to buy this old Subaru to go rallycross with.
What's rallycross again?
It's racing in fields and whatnot.
Okay. And you used to do that up at Greg Farm?
Yeah, Greg Farm.
Yeah,
Norm, not your farm.
Yeah. Oh, rats.
So at any rate, I bought this car, and he convinced me to register it. It had a CAT efficiency code. And I'm like, man, I don't want to spend all that money. I don't want to do all this. So I said, we're just going to run it until we get a ticket, inspection, So I went up and ran it. And the first event we had was a 2-day event. And the car runs off the rev limiter the entire time. So it's always revving up, like right up max all the time. And it cleaned the converter out, and the light never came back on again. So that's when I realized that, there is a way, if you get a CAT efficiency code, if you stay out of the high gears, running it at a higher RPM.
Right.
And when it's safe, step on it, let it wind up through the gears instead of just touching the gas.
Right.
Okay. A lot of times they'll clean out, so you don't have to replace them.
Huh. That's really incredibly interesting.
Yeah, because it's funny. It's just sometimes I used to do it for people, and I say, look, you can do it yourself. It's just don't let it run lower than 3,500 RPMs.
Right.
Okay. And whenever you can, and you're in a safe spot, put it to the floor and let it wind right up and go through the gears.
Right. And most people have automatic transmissions now.
You can still manual shift and just keep it above 3,000 RPM.
Like into 2 or 1 and just sort of...
The other thing is when you start it up, don't let it sit there and run. Drive it right away.
Really? Never heard that.
Yes, because fuel injection gives it the proper amount. If it's working proper, it gives it the proper amount of mixture all the time.
Right.
And the engine will heat up much faster with you driving it than just sitting there idling.
Well, why did people used to want to let their cars warm up before they?
Because they had carburetors. They were horrible. People don't remember. People always complain about fuel injection. They don't remember how bad carburetors were. They were so bad. I'll have all my young guys. I send them out to get an old car. I tell them it's carbureted, and they're out there turning it over, and I have to yell out the window. Pull out the choke. Pump the gas pedal, pull out the choke,
So what percentage of cars on the road now have carburetors? I mean,
antique cars.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
What year did that shift?
That started shifting in the 80s. And it was kind of funny when they did it. They originally came out with this thing called throttle body injection. And the reason they did it, actually, they had computer-controlled carburetors, which was really funny because you had the worst of both worlds. You still had a carburetor that was terrible. Right, and then you had all the electronics that could mess up with it.
Right,
it was like the perfect storm, And they did it. The reason they did it was so foolish. They did it because they were afraid mechanics were going to freak out because they're going to open the hood and they're not going to recognize anything. So it's like, yeah, it still has a carburetor,
Right.
So it was that kind of thing. So they kind of morphed into injection,
Right.
And injection's awesome, though. It's the best.
It is. It's far better than a carburetor. That's what you're saying.
So far better. Yeah.
And of the cars you work on, because you work on some vintage cars, and I guess all of them have carburetors?
Most of them do. It's really funny because I opened in 1982, right?
Right.
And in 1982, I decided I'm going to do fuel injection. So I did all the European cars had fuel injection then. So I did all those, right? And everybody was like, I got all kinds of business because it's like, oh, my God, he does fuel injection, Now it's the opposite. Everybody goes, hey, this old guy up there, he knows carburetors.
He does carburetors. And do any of the other guys in your shop know carburetors? Or do any of the young guys sort of have a desire to learn how to work on these old cars?
Yeah, it takes a long time. It's not that simple, Carburetors are a different animal. And there's all different types of carbs, and they all work different.
Okay.
And you have to know the theory behind how it works in order to repair it. You can't just, it does this, so it's this,
Right.
Each one's different.
Yeah.
And there's several different types. There's variable Venturi, then there's a straight Venturi, and those are the two basic ones.
And in the cars that you race, I'm guessing they're all fuel injection. You don't mess with no carburetors.
No, I'm an old fart. I do old fart racing. It's like we have carburetors.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Matter of fact, on my brother's car, we caught fire a lot. Because what happens, we get so much G-force in the corners that the carburetors have a vent to breathe, right? Well, I get so much G-force in the corners that gas would come out the vent, and then it would catch on fire, right?
That sounds like a design flaw.
Well, you normally don't get that much G-force. I mean, we get a lot of G-force.
Okay.
So what we did was we made plumbing. We plumbed this thing up so the gas has to go up this tube and then goes down into a tank.
Okay.
So it doesn't get on the outside.
When it sloshes
you don't
out,
catch on fire.
You capture it.
Yeah, because we got to a different level where we were getting a lot of G-force and it was happening a lot. We'd show up to an event and everybody's grabbing their fire extinguishers and they go, they're here.
But you must have a fire extinguisher in your car when you're doing that stuff.
Not in the car, no. Not in the car, no.
I've seen cars with fire extinguishers.
Yeah, they don't require it. The cars we drive are really small. The whole car weighs 910 pounds.
Right.
So it's like there's not much to it. So like a fire extinguisher would add like 7 pounds to it. That would be like you go slower. So
yeah. So do you pay attention to your weight when you're racing? You're like, oh my God, I'm up to 180. I need to lose a few pounds.
Sometimes, yeah, I do a little.
That's just amazing. That it's that sensitive.
Yeah, well, we do what they call on the race cars. We do corner balancing also, and that has to do with weight. Like get even pressure on all four wheels. You have computer scales, and you put it on, and you set down pressures.
Okay.
And so if you get it perfect, you get even pressure on all four tires, and that's the best grip you can get, and you can go the fastest that way.
So they're not necessarily inflated to the same pressure?
No, they're all inflated to the same pressure, to the pressures we want. Tire inflation on a race car you do with a digital parameter. Every time we come off the track, you do outside, inside, center. If it's hot in the center, you have too much air.
Okay.
It should be even all the way across, a little hotter on the outside if there's a lot of corners.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that's how you determine
what measures temperature.
Yeah.
And what temperature? I guess it depends.
It depends on how hot it is out and stuff. You try not to run over 170 degrees.
On the tire.
Yeah, if you start running over 170, they're melting and they're not doing so well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right, well, this sort of brings us to the next question. Amy D, not at all. This is why we're here. Amy D asked, does tire pressure change in different weather? I'm guessing it does.
Yes, it does. It has to do with the moisture in the air that they put in the tire. That's why if they use nitrogen, okay, there's no moisture in it, and the tire pressure will stay exactly the same.
And do people do that? Do you use nitrogen in your tires?
I don't. It's expensive, and it's much cheaper just to go out and let the air out of it and put air in.
Yeah.
Like when we race, before we go out on the track, like the car we're running now, the front tire pressure is 12 pounds. Okay. And when we go out on the track, the first time out, it'll go from 12 to like 14 or 15. Mm-hmm. And then you let it down. And once it gets around that temperature, it'll stay.
12 pounds of pressure on the tire.
Yeah, well, the car weighs 910 pounds.
Right, okay. But my pressure, I get a sexy Subaru, is like 35 or something.
Yeah. Low profiles will run like 40, 50,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But these are slicks. They're,
And so I would have guessed for Amy D's question, does tire pressure change in different weather? There was the temperature, outside temperature, that made the difference. You say it's the humidity.
No, it's the humidity in the air that they put in the tire. The outside temperature, because it has humidity in the air, it expands and contracts with the difference in temperature.
Is there any way, apart from nitrogen, to diminish the humidity that goes into the tire?
Yeah, have your tires put on in the winter.
Really?
It's dry.
Huh. Interesting.
Well, I've had issues where we've mounted tires in when it was really, really, really humid. And what'll happen is it'll change like crazy. 10 degrees will make a difference in the tire pressure.
Huh.
And with the tire pressure monitors, that becomes an issue sometimes.
So do you recommend people let all of the air out of their tires ever? And then
No,
refill
not
them?
unless they're having an issue. No.
Right.
If they're having an issue, sometimes what we'll do is bring them in and change it. It's very important, the shop that you go to, that they maintain their air system and keep the moisture out of it. Because if they don't drain their compressor and they don't have a filter that runs through to remove the water, you can get so much water in an air line in the shop where you'll spray an air gun and you'll see the water come out of it. So if you fill tires with that, it's not good.
That's not helpful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got
the tire pressure monitors are awesome, by the way. Everybody complains about them because they're always on.
Yeah, mine's on all the time.
90% of the time when they're on, it is a tire pressure problem.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the accidents come from.
Mine's always on. My mechanic, I forget who it is, said
the batteries are bad.
So the sensor was probably...
the batteries go bad in the sensors. They only last so long. Yeah.
Right.
All
right. Well, speaking of warning lights, Amy D. also from Salzburg writes in, she got a 2005 Saturn Ion or Eon, I don't know, and the check engine light is off for 2 months and it comes back on. This happens all the time. She's brought it to a mechanic like 5 times. And it still happens. What do you think might be happening here?
Well, there'd be a whole host of questions. First of all, does it come up with the same code each time?
Well, but consumers, I don't see a code on my thing. I just see the check engine light.
When she went into him, he plugged in it and it gave him a code.
Oh, right.
Okay, so the interesting thing would be to know is it the same code?
So she should probably ask that.
And also, how much money did she spend on the diagnostic time? Okay. Because a lot of people in the automotive industry, up until fuel injection, the diagnostic time was built into the time to replace the part. Okay. Because usually before fuel injection, diagnostic time wasn't much.
Right.
Most of it was somebody call on the phone and say, I got this, and this is how many miles are on it. This is what it's doing. Before all the electronics, I had a 95% chance of knowing what's wrong with it before it got there.
Right.
Okay. The problem is now with injection, they have to spend the time in diagnostics. If they don't spend the time in diagnostic, that's when you get led down the rosy path.
Right.
Okay. The most common thing with check engine lights is that people don't check the basics.
People, you mean the mechanics?
Mechanics. In other words, first thing they do is they plug that in. And it says, okay, it has an O2 sensor code. Okay. Of course, the guy pulls the car in the shop and I hear the exhaust leaking. Right. So I go to him, hey, it's got an O2 code and stuff. This is the O2 sensor that's supposedly bad. And I go, well, I hear an exhaust leak. Where is that? Oh, it's in front of the O2 sensor. Well, gee, that'll mess it up.
Right.
Because it aspirates oxygen in.
Yeah.
Okay. If a car needs to be tuned up really bad, okay, if a cylinder doesn't fire correctly, okay, it won't use all the oxygen. So there'll actually be more oxygen in the exhaust. And what happens, the O2 sensor reads that and says, gee, there's too much oxygen. So it tries to correct for it. And they can only correct so much, and then it turns the light on. There's all kinds of stuff that'll do it, but the thing that she should know is it the same thing each time?
Well, what should she do next? I mean, because
what she's got to do is ask them.
Well, she's taken it to this place 5 times.
Yeah, but what she should do is
go somewhere else.
Yeah, she could. The thing is, it would be interesting to find out if it's the same thing. Or what exactly is it doing? It'd
be interesting to you. It'd be more interesting to her to just get it freaking fixed.
Yeah. The problem is with that stuff, like if she came to me, we have a flat fee. It's $540 diagnostic time.
To run that diagnostic thing?
Right.
$540 an hour?
No, $540, period.
Okay.
You pay the $540. We will spend whatever time it takes to find out what it is. Okay.
But you got a computer you hook up to the car.
Yeah, the computer is not the problem. That's 90% of the time. That's not the issue. What's the issue? First of all, like with injection, all the software is predicated on the fact that the physical stuff is correct. I can't tell you how many cars come in and they put an air mass meter in it, and gee, it gets a second air mass meter, and then now they got an O2 code and all this kind of stuff, right? So we go and the guys look at it, and the first thing they have to do is pull the plugs, look at those, make sure that those are the right gap and stuff, and they're not too worn. Then pull the air filter out and check all the way down where the air comes into the air filter. Make sure there's not a mouse nest in there.
Right.
I can't tell you how many air mass meters get replaced for that alone. Okay? Because what they do is they plug in, it says it's that, and they go, AutoZone. AutoZone sells more parts than anything, because you go in there and they'll check it for free. And they come out and they go, oh, you need an air mass meter. So they put an air mass meter on. A week later, the light's back on, and it's still got an air mass meter code, and it's something else.
Right.
If the boot breaks between the throttle body and the air mass meter, it brings air in that didn't go through the air mass meter, and the computer doesn't recognize it because that air didn't pass the air mass meter.
Right.
There's all those kind of things that they should be looking at. Usually when it's a serious problem, like they've been beating their heads against the wall, it's either a physical thing that's wrong, okay, or it's a wiring issue. Usually a ground someplace, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Grounds will drive this stuff crazy. It'll just make it do bizarre stuff. Right. And if you don't spend the time, in order to diagnose this, what they need to do is, if they will get to a point where they will actually have to check each wire from the computer out. Okay? We pull the computer out of the car, pull it down so it's still hooked up.
The car's computer, you pull it out.
Yeah, we pull it down so you can get to it, okay?
Right.
And then we have a little thing that we can run inside the wire so it doesn't mess them up, but you can check and see the voltage there, and you check every single line. And that's what takes forever. You can have 60 wires. And you got to check all those.
And the $540 diagnostic test that you do, you have, separate from the car's computer, you have your own computer.
We have our own, yeah.
And you plug that into the car's computer,
right.
And they talk to each other.
Well, it'll give us live data. In other words, we can drive it down the road and then come back in and hit a button and it'll play it back.
Right.
So you can see it also has what they call, freeze frame. It does freeze frame. So like you can look up the code, then hit the freeze frame, and the computer will replay what was going on at the time when it failed. How much you were stepping on the gas pedal.
Okay.
Was it, there's all kinds of information you can get from it, The other thing we do is if you pay the $540, you don't pay for any diagnostic time for a year.
Huh. That's interesting. And is this a typical thing that garages do?
Most of them, no. And the problem is there's times when it's a beautiful thing, I'll make a ton of money. There's times when it's not so good.
Right.
I've had cars where we had like 150 hours in it. And before you figure it out,
Oof.
and it's...
And that's just, you bill that once at $540.
Exactly.
Huh.
So the ones that you make good time on, but what it does is it stops this like 5 times. Every time she goes in, she's on the clock.
Right.
And what happens, it puts more pressure on the mechanic. The chances of him fixing it actually gets really, really slim because she comes in and she's been there like her 3rd time, right? She doesn't want to pay a lot of money, okay?
Yeah.
And this guy may have to spend 3 hours to find out what it is.
Well, she's probably going to go back in and say, hey, I keep coming here for this, and you keep fixing it, and then it breaks again. How about, like, not charging me and making it right? How does that play with somebody who runs a garage?
That's a reasonable request. I mean, it's like if you say you fixed it, you should have fixed it. And if you didn't fix it, yes, there are other things that can go wrong. This is the problem. This is another reason we do a flat fee. I plug into a car, and it's got like 7 codes. Okay? Rule of thumb. 7 different codes. Red lights flashing.
Yeah,
saying it says, okay, cat efficiency code. It's got this. It's got that. It goes on and on and on. Okay? What you do generally is you fix the first code. You fix the first code, and you clear it, and you run it, and you see what comes back. Okay? Now, we can road test it, and I'll road test it maybe like 4 times. Okay? If it doesn't come on within the 4 times, they come pick up the car, and I tell them, look, come take it. You had like 6 codes. We fixed the first code. The other ones didn't seem to come back, but you run it. If it comes back, bring it back in. You're not on time for the diagnostics, and we go from there. But it also stops us from... A lot of guys will sit there, and they'll try to fix like all 3 codes or 4 codes, right? And it may... The 3 of the 4 may not even be a real code. May not be a real problem.
So the computer's sort of sending a red flag.
Well, the software isn't that good. It's not that sophisticated. So what happens is if you keep running it with a code on, all right, the software isn't that good to say, okay, well, it has this code. So since it has that code, it's going to come up with this code, and this code, and not do it. It just starts kicking out the other codes. Right. Okay? And that's a problem.
Gotcha.
But somebody has to spend the time to diagnose it, and that's the problem. Most of the time, that doesn't happen. Most of the times, guys try to get it knocked down in less than an hour.
Right.
Or replace stuff.
Right.
Because they make money every time they replace stuff. So you go in, there's nothing worse than going in and pick up your car, and it has $2,000 worth of parts. Okay? And it's still not fixed.
Right. Yeah. All right. Listen, we have, I requested people to call in with their questions as well. And we got one fine young man who called in and asked his question. We're going to play that right now. Our first audio call in here.
Hi, I have a question about my power steering in my 2002 Subaru Forester.
Okay.
Last night I was out driving and it started with a whining noise. It's kind of a...
Yep.
As you turn the wheel.
You do that well.
And there's about 30 seconds of that. And after that, nothing. Nope. And then I lost power steering completely.
Yep.
And built power steering up this morning with new fluid, and it has not improved. I'm thinking maybe my pump is blown.
No.
I'd love some feedback.
Yeah,
Thanks.
The pumps generally don't fail that easy. Okay, the pumps can really put up with a lot. Okay, generally what happens, what year is it?
It's taped.
Oh, it's taped.
Sorry,
okay,
I should have told you.
Oh, sorry. More than likely, it's a leak from a line.
He said it was a 2002.
2002? Oh, it's leaked from a rusty line. Definitely. Okay. That would be the line that goes between the pump itself, the pressure line, and on the Subarus, they're in several different sections. So probably the one section where it runs down the side, they get rusted a lot, and those will blow out, and you'll just pump all the fluid out on the ground. So more than likely, that's it. Generally, if the racks leak, that comes on slowly. This sounds like everything was fine, and all of a sudden it happened in one night. So more than likely, it's a line. But I doubt it needs a pump.
Huh. Nice. All right.
Okay.
Well, that sounds like a cheaper fix, probably. Is it an easier fix?
Yes, on both counts.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, good. Now we got a question from right here in the studio. Jen H. of Rhinebeck, New York,
Hi,
who's
Mark.
our assistant
Hello.
producer.
Thank you for taking my call.
It shows how desperate I am.
I have a Subaru station wagon.
Yep.
That's about as much as I know about it. It's black.
Okay.
And it's sometime like 2018.
Okay.
So when I have automatic windows, and when I want to raise my windows all the way, sometimes, not all the time, it gets to a certain point and then it lowers all the way back down, and then I have to manually raise the windows. And I don't want to spend a lot of money. Is this something that I can... So why is this happening?
It has to do with the automatic part. You can flick the switch so it goes up all the way. And what happens is there's basically two failures. There's a sensor in the door that tells the switch, which the switch is not just a switch, it's actually a little control unit. And the sensor in the door tells it where the window is. That's probably not working right. So it thinks it's up to the top before it gets up to the top. So then you have to keep flicking it and playing with it. So it finally decides, okay, we'll let it go. It's hard to. The only way they can tell is actually take the door apart.
Yes.
And check the sensor.
That sounds expensive.
Define expensive.
Everything to do with the car.
How much does that run?
You can spend an hour and a half figuring it out. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then plus whatever the parts would be.
So that's like $750, kind of.
Hour and a half would be $202, and plus the switch. The switches for those, I hate to go by memory, but I think they were like under $200. They were around $200, something like that. Yeah, you can hit $400, no problem.
Okay.
Finger works good, right?
Thank you. That I have to.
The finger works better and better.
You just be patient, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It also depends on how hard it's raining out, right?
That's part of the issue. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. No,
I love that. Patience is a function of price.
Yes.
All right, I get another question here. Let me see which one's the best. Oh, yeah. Loyal listener Amy H. asks, how do you turn off the fucking seatbelt ding, 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 ding when you don't buckle it up?
Depends on the car. You can't shut it off.
You
legally.
can't?
No.
Oh, legally.
Legally, you can't shut it off. Yeah.
But mechanically.
Mechanically, you find where it is and you strangle it.
You curse at it while you're strangling it?
Leave the key on and leave the seatbelt off, running.
Yeah.
And it sits there and ding, 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 and you keep going until you find it. If you want to be nice, you can take a piece of duct tape and put a piece of duct tape over it, because then it very gently goes...
Until you find it being the speaker that makes that noise?
Yeah.
Well, where are they usually located?
They change them. They put them... Some of them are in the dashboard with the instrument panel.
But you're finding the actual speaker.
Right, yeah, and just block it off with something, because the problem is most of them are wired into something that if you disconnect them, it affects something else. Excuse me.
Oh, geez.
So if you just find the speaker, like I say, just kill it. I would just put duct tape over it, because then it's quiet.
All right, good. We got another tape question here from Stinky M right here in South Street in Rhinebeck. Asking for his brother-in-law, I think. Is it effective to take care of the check engine light by putting black tape over it? I've thought of this myself.
I would prefer a picture of something you like, but that's fine until you need a state inspection.
It's fine until you need an inspection.
That's not going to work with an inspection.
But then, all of a sudden...
The other issue with it is that it can affect the efficiency. Gas mileage can be affected greatly. Okay. And, hopefully we all don't want to pollute, too much. Okay. Right. So, we'd want to take care of that. If the light isn't flashing, okay, if the light's just on, chances are it's okay to drive and you're not going to get stuck.
Right.
If the light's flashing, don't keep going, because that means the mixture is off too much, either because of a misfire or because of something else. And you can burn the converter out, because it'll put too much garbage in the converter the converter burns whatever comes in.
Right.
So if you give it too much, it'll actually, the converters have ceramic in them.
Yeah.
It gets so hot, it'll melt the ceramic.
Egads.
Yeah.
So the ceramic, which is the stuff they put in the outside of the space shuttle.
Right, exactly. It'll melt that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty hot.
Yeah.
So the check engine light, it's either on or it flashes. I didn't know there were two speeds on this thing.
Well, if it's flashing, then that means imminent. Don't keep going.
Right.
Because if you keep going, it's going to cost you a ton of money.
Huh.
You know?
So what do? You're like 50 miles from home. It starts flashing.
Drive slow. See if it stops flashing.
Maybe take a break. Let things cool down.
Let it cool down. Try it again. Don't step on it so much. Go real easy on it.
Right.
And see if it stops. But if it keeps flashing, I myself would have it towed.
You'd pull over.
Because a tow is cheaper than buying a converter.
Right.
Way cheaper. And
you do a lot of tows, right?
Yes.
And that's a nice part of your business?
Tows are okay.
Yeah.
I used to, the accident tows are awesome. They pay like no tomorrow.
Really? The insurance companies?
Yes, the insurance companies. It's insane.
And what about tows like my tow? Like I've got AAA, which gives me free towing for
right.
Like
yeah, he makes out okay with that. Where they make out, they get deals on tow trucks and stuff through AAA.
Right.
And they help them out.
So you make less on a AAA call than you do on an accident call.
Oh, I wouldn't do a AAA call. I don't belong to AAA.
That's funny.
I actually used to belong in the state police list and the sheriff's list, and I got off the state police list. I had me taken off that. I just do the sheriff's list, and it's interesting. It's interesting to do. They call you anytime. They call you 3:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whatever. It's snowing, whatever, and you got to go out.
And were they different kind of calls from the sheriff and the state police? No,
it's just the sheriffs are really awesome.
Yeah.
Sheriffs run it like a well-oiled machine. If they don't allow chasing, because what happens, a lot of guys chase. So you have an accident with your car, and there's 3 tow trucks there.
Oh.
And so the cop goes, "Who do you want to tow your car?" Okay.
Right.
And of course, the guy's going to pick one that's there, unless nobody's watching. And then the guys start, "Hey, have me tow your car." It's like you just had an accident.
Right.
I mean, it's like the worst part of ambulance chasing,
So do tow truck drivers have like a police scanner sometimes?
Yeah, they listen to a scanner and they, and then what happens if they get a call, they never tell you what the tow is. They call, right? And they say, "We have a tow. Are you available?" Right? Now, if you have a scanner, you've been listening. And if there was no accident, then you say, "No, I can't do it." Because it's going to be a flat tire or it's going to be a breakdown and you're not going to make much money.
Right.
So they won't do it.
Or a check engine light flashing and
flashing, whatever. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So it's it's kind of crazy. But the sheriffs do it awesome, though. The sheriffs are so on point.
That's nice.
Like if you show up at an accident and the sheriffs are there and you weren't called, they'll come over and say, "What are you doing here?" And they say, "You have 5 minutes to get in your truck and go, or you will be banned."
Really?
Yes.
They're just not messing with that.
No.
That's great.
So it's nice when you get a call. I go there. There's not 3 other trucks there.
Yeah.
It's not a bad scene.
Right.
And when they call me, I get a car.
Nice. There you go.
So.
All right. Another question from the same loyal listener, Stinky M on South Street here in Rhinebeck. Does having the air conditioning on reduce gas mileage, or is that a, quote, load of crap our fathers used to tell us?
Now, having the AC on in the summer when it's hot, is you get better gas mileage.
You get better gas mileage.
You get much better gas mileage, yes, because what happens because of aerodynamics. The aerodynamics are huge. When you open the windows, it's not as simple as air flowing through. Okay? To give you an idea how much air flows through, back in the 50s, Studebaker built this car that was crazy, this Studebaker Hawk, right? It was turbocharged, and the thing would do over 200 miles an hour. This is back in the 50s. Okay?
Wow.
And they had it out on the salt flats, and the first time they were checking it, they had the front windows open, and it blew the back window out of the car.
Wow, amazing.
So how much pressure it takes to blow a window out of the car? That's, you weren't doing 200, but it is better to have it on than run the windows open. Yeah.
Right. So it's better. I mean, really, it's better to drive with the windows closed than open because of the drag of the aerodynamics.
Yep.
Amazing. Okay, here we go. Mr. D apostrophe O. That's his last name.
Okay.
Writes in from sunny Rhinebeck, New York, to ask, who's your favorite blues guitarist? I know that's not a car question, but
that's a tough one.
Yeah.
There's like several.
And for those who don't know at home, I happen to know Mark's a blues drummer and a huge blues aficionado.
Joe Bonamassa is awesome.
Joe Bonamassa?
Joe Bonamassa. There's also Slam Allen.
Slam Allen?
Slam Allen's awesome.
I'm writing this down. I've not heard of Slam Allen.
Yeah, Slam Allen's really good. Yeah.
And these are contemporary guys?
Yeah.
And what about of all time, living or dead?
All time?
Yeah.
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
Stevie Ray. Stevie has the timing. In other words, he can rip it up, right? But he doesn't do it until you're like, geez, will you stop doing that? He does it. And just when you're starting to get into that, he drags it out, and it just makes you want more.
Right.
And he has that.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid reading Popular Mechanics, they called that the mechanic's feel or the mechanic's touch.
Yeah.
Knowing just how far to screw something in before you strip the threads.
The guy I work with, Keith, I'll be working on an old carburetor car, and he'll walk by and he goes, "Go ahead, keep messing. You're going to mess it up. This is as good as it gets." You always try to find, there might be a little more. You don't know unless you try, So,
right.
Yeah.
Go on, keep messing.
Yeah.
And Keith is your partner in crime there at M&M.
Keith's been with me for 38 years. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
and
he's a wonderful guy.
Everybody says he's a spectacular mechanic as well.
Yep.
All right, good. Here's, let me see what else we have in the way of questions. Here's a good one. Cecile C. from Rhinebeck says, would love to know where I could go to get the spreading leather splits in the car seat of my 2011 Lexus RX 350 fixed. So the leather is cracking and spreading.
There's a guy in Hudson who
there's a guy in Hudson.
He
knock
does
3 times on the door. Tell him Mark sent you.
He does. I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head, but he does. He does all the boat, covers and stuff. And he also does awnings and stuff like that.
Okay.
He's done several seats for me, and he did a really good job.
So you could Google like boat covers, awnings, and car seats in Hudson.
In Hudson,
that'd probably be this guy.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, he's the only one I know that will do it. There's a guy down in Newburgh who's absolutely awesome, but he's usually like 8 months to a year behind, So.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, you brought drinks for us as the tradition here, and correct me if I'm Norm.
Yeah.
You brought some drinks for us. Tell us about this this drink you brought for us to enjoy.
It's my obsession. That's it. I always do too much of everything.
Polar
It
brand.
used to be Coke, then it was Diet Coke. Now it's this.
And now it's this. It's
Right.
Polar brand premium seltzer, black cherry flavored.
Yes.
And we brought 4 glasses from the Poughkeepsie Sports Car Club. Who wants some of this? Who's drinking this Friday night with me and Mark? Everybody.
Oh, these were all winning glasses, by the way.
You had to win?
Yeah, you had to win to get
Well,
these.
cheers.
Yeah. It just means the local events, everybody's so slow I can win. That's what it means.
And the Poughkeepsie Sports Car Club, I'm guessing that's in Poughkeepsie. It's still around?
It's still around. We actually do events in Kingston, the old IBM site.
Okay.
We do events. You get off Enterprise Road. We're actually doing an event Sunday if it doesn't rain too much.
At the old IBM site.
At the old IBM site
Kingston.
in Kingston. Yeah, we rent pavement and we set up road courses with cones.
And is it spectator friendly?
Yeah. Yeah, you can come and just...
Is there a website people can go to figure out about this?
PSCC.
PSCC for
.org, I think it is.
For Poughkeepsie Sports Car Club.org.
Right. Yeah.
And they'll be able to find out when this is and where is there.
And you should always check the website before you go, because sometimes if the weather changes at the last minute, if it's going to downpour all day, we just don't bother.
They probably have a Facebook page or Instagram or something that they post to as well. Interesting. And what's the event this weekend?
We just set up road courses with cones. And you run as fast as you can through it.
And how many cars will show up?
We'll have. It depends on how good the weather is. The weather's iffy, so we may only have like maybe 40 or 50 cars. 40 or 50 drivers, I should say.
That's a lot.
No, not really.
What's a lot then?
Over 80. Over 80 is a lot. Yeah.
It sounds like a party.
Yeah, it's a well-oiled machine. It's awesome because they come in, we tech all the cars, we set up this course, which has all kinds of restrictions. I have to be so far from fixed objects and all that kind of stuff. So if somebody messes up, they don't take out a light pole or wreck their car. They just hit plastic cones.
Right.
So we set all this up, and then they tech them. We do a driver's meeting, and then we start running the cars. Once we get it set, a car will come off course every 20 seconds. And they will, at the end of the day, we have trophies, we have everything set up. It's kind of interesting to watch because if you get 50 cars and we give them 8 runs, it's a lot of runs, And first car will go off at like 10:30, and we'll be done by like 3 o'clock.
And what car will you be running?
The new car I bought. It's an open wheel car. It weighs 910 pounds.
Okay.
And it's a little cigar car with wheels.
And it doesn't have a 7-pound fire extinguisher.
No.
But there's 7-pound fire extinguishers there.
Everywhere.
And do fires...
They know I'll be there.
do fires happen often in these events?
No.
Just you?
No, it happens, sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
All right, good. More questions.
Yep.
Scott Epter writes in, Scott E. from Rhinebeck. Mark turned me into a VW guy in 2002, and I haven't looked back since. VWs...
Scott is the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Is he?
Yes, he is.
Because you're not necessarily a VW fan, if I remember correctly.
The issue I have with the Germans' cars is that their appreciation of customers is like not much. Okay? If they have a problem, they'll just keep making it that way because they're German. Everything's right. If you had a problem, you did something wrong. It wasn't what they did. I'm serious.
All right, good.
I'm
going to segue right into another question from Jennifer S.T.A. Upstate in Canada. What car would you recommend buying? Reliable, reasonably priced in terms of repairs and basic maintenance. And would you suggest going electric or hybrid?
Where is she?
In northern America.
Yeah.
Up close to Canada.
Close to Canada?
Yeah.
There's no way I would go with a plug-in. Okay? Because the distance, the estimated distance for the plug-ins is kind of a little off, a lot. Because they're calculated on the perfect day. You have a 70-degree day, no rain. Okay? Day, not night. Okay? If it's cold out, you got to run the heater. That takes energy off the battery. That makes it less mileage that you can go.
Right.
Okay. I would, if I was to do.
So in rural areas,
if it was in a rural area, if it was a rural area, I really wouldn't do a plug-in.
Right.
I would do a hybrid.
Right.
The only hybrid I would recommend buying is a Prius. That's because they've made so many of them. And they got them ironed out. They do really well.
Well, except in design. I mean, they're all kind of ugly, aren't they?
Well, okay, yeah. Yeah, well,
all right, if you're going to badmouth Prius design.
It depends on how you look at it. In other words, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, okay?
It is.
Now, I had a customer. She's a really sweet person, and she was married to this guy. He's a great guy, and she always drove Jaguars, right? She always drove Jags, and she, loved Jaguars, okay? So she finally got to a point where she said, geez, this thing is, it's just, I'm always out of money. And I said, there are cheaper cars than Jaguar, though, right? So she says, well, what? And I said, look, go get a Honda Fit, right? She went and she bought a Honda Fit. She never drove it or anything. She just went over and bought it, right? She got in the car and she called me the next day. She goes, I hate this car. I hate this effing car. I hate it so bad. This is like horrible, right? 3 months later, she calls me. She goes, I love this car. I said, I love this car. Every time I get in it, it runs.
Right.
And she goes, what I used to put in the Jaguar for gas, she goes, 1 week can now run me like over a month.
Well, it's the old joke about Jaguars. You got to buy two, right?
Right,
one
right.
to run and one for the spare
No,
parts.
you just have a lot of friends with Jaguars and borrow theirs. That's the best way.
That's the best way.
Yeah.
All right. Eric S. writes in, is someone looking into purchasing my first EV vehicle, which
Yep.
I think is redundant, right? We decided that the
Yeah.
V is
Yeah.
my electric vehicle. Is the local automotive service industry, separate from dealership service, up to speed with EV repairs and maintenance?
There's very little repair with EV vehicles. With a plug-in,
Yeah.
there's very little repair. It's all software. And that they're not letting out yet. The government's going to get on them, and they're eventually going to have to let it out, and it'll all come to pass. But
Let what out?
the information. There's a law in the books that you can't say, well, I'm building Volvo, so I'm not going to let the information go out. So I'm not going to let anybody else repair them.
Oh, I gotcha.
Which, it's funny that they try to do that because it's really stupid. Because if you're a Volvo owner, right, and you go and nobody has the information and you break down someplace,
Right.
you have to have it towed 300 miles to get it to a Volvo dealer.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't go very well.
No, it
Yeah.
would make me want to not buy a Volvo.
The big thing with the plugins is basically just tires,
And what-
possible alignment.
What about
and
brake pads and stuff?
brake pads eventually, but they last forever because when you hit the brake, it regenerates. It takes the power and kicks up the motor to use it as a generator and puts the power back into the battery.
Right.
So like if you're going downhill and you step on the brakes actually don't come on very much. The brakes are only there if you have to like really make a panic stop,
Right.
you know? And, the trouble with the plugins though, batteries when they go are incredibly expensive, insanely expensive. You know, in the Tesla, they're like 21,000.
What?
The 21,000 to have a battery put in.
Oh my God.
And the problem is none of those batteries make 20 years. They're supposed to last 10 years. Okay? But
Right.
it depends on how you charge them. There's a lot of charging idiosyncrasies that you have to pay attention to. It's not good to charge a Tesla 100% and then not drive the car. They've actually had them catch on fire. Okay? So you only want to charge them to like maybe 92, 93%. Now,
Unless you're going to get in right away and drive it.
unless you're like on a trip, you're at a Tesla charger, you charge it up to 100%, and you're going to get in it and get on the interstate and go.
Right.
And it's fine.
And what's the range? What's the maximum range of some of these plug-ins?
Around 300 miles. That's the most. That is the most.
So it's going
on
to
a good
take
day.
you like 15 days to get across country. 12, 15, whatever.
Yeah, well, the other issues happening now is that, they're putting in a bunch of chargers. But if you think about it, on the interstate, when you pull off the interstate, okay, they'll have 20 gas pumps.
Yeah.
Okay. For somebody to fill a car with gas takes a little under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe 5 minutes if they're slow. Especially not if they're one of those people that leaves their car at the pump and goes inside. All bets are off. But, I hate those people.
Yeah.
The thing is that, so what happens if you include that in, they would need like 150 chargers. Like if all the cars become electric plug-ins, you're going to need 150 chargers at every stop. In order to not spend like an hour and a half there.
And that doesn't seem likely.
Probably not. Nobody's thought this through. California has a law that after 2035, you can't buy a gas car in California anymore. Okay? PG&E came out right after and said, we can't do it. And they said, well, gee, we'll give you money. And it's like, no, we can't do it. Everybody has this idea that if you plug it in, it doesn't use energy. It uses the same amount of energy. As a matter of fact, like you take a Tesla that does 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, it's a lot of energy.
Right.
Okay? And, the problem is what they really need to do is they need to do it from all ends. If you're in a city, yes, a plug-in's awesome. Because every time you're stopped, nothing's happening. Unless it's too hot out, the AC's still running.
Right.
But if you're rural, if you take like a Honda Fit, that'll be in the upper 40s to like 52 and no battery. So the car can run for 20 years
Right.
if you take good care of it. And they also haven't calculated the carbon footprint of what it takes to mine lithium.
Is that what all the batteries are made out of?
They're all using lithium, and the problem is also with these batteries, there's no recycling them. When they're done, they don't know what they're going to do with them yet.
With all this lithium.
With all the spent lithium. Some brain surgeon who figures this out is going to make a lot of money.
What to do with all the
But the lithium batteries, that's it. And when they're done, they're done.
So the lithium eventually loses its ability to retain a charge?
I don't know exactly why they fail.
Right.
But when they fail, there is nothing you can do. Now, they don't usually have to replace the entire battery, okay? Because they can take it apart and you can replace sections, okay? The problem with that is the whole battery is the same age.
Right.
So if you replace one bad section, chances are within a year you're going to have another bad section, or 6 months or a month, whatever, you know?
Right.
So, and people say to me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell the car when it's 8 years old. It's like, sure, nobody's going to know that it needs a $20,000 battery in 2 years. Right. So the price goes accordingly.
Right.
You know?
Egads.
Yeah.
All right. Kimmy B from Montclair, New Jersey writes in. She says, the weather stripping came off the back doors of my relatively new used Kia Soul. Do I have to take it to a Kia dealer, or can I go anywhere to get the weather stripping fixed?
You should be able to go anywhere.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's not...
It's not like particular to that make and model.
Yeah, well, what they do is you get the VIN number, you call the dealer, and you order it, and they drop it off, and they put it on.
Okay.
Matter of fact, they should look at it first, because maybe it doesn't need a new one. Maybe it just needs to be reattached, or, you know.
Yeah. All right.
And all the weather strips should be sprayed with silicone before winter.
Really?
Yes, because if you ever have your door stick, it gets frozen.
Yeah.
If you spray the weather strips with silicone, that won't happen.
Huh.
It won't stick.
And it's just a silicone spray? You
silicone
wipe it on,
spray. Yeah. Not a silicone lube, a silicone spray.
Huh.
Different. Lube has like a little grease in it.
Is WD-40 silicone spray?
No.
No. It's not. What is that?
No, that will soak into the weather strip, make it swell, and do all kinds of stuff, possibly.
So don't use WD-40.
No, I would
you heard
use
it right here in Radio Free Rhinecliff.
Right.
But Matty over here is sort of saying, like, yeah, you should use WD-40, which is, you know, I don't know why he would say that when clearly you shouldn't. So what the bane of a locksmith?
Yes.
He says, when we want the locksmith's point of view, we'll ask for the locksmith's point of view. Taffy Cakes of North Rhinebeck here writes in. She says a 2014 Mini Cooper S, and there's a broken cable in her hood latch. She says, and she said that it burns oil and she can't check the oil.
You're familiar with that.
Shut up. Mark made me get rid of my Mini Cooper.
Car. He still cries over that. He walks out in the driveway and he looks where it used to be. And
I'm a Mini driver stuck in some like sham automobile.
Yeah, that's a problem. You can get them open. It's not easy, but you can get them open.
But she's got to get that.
You got to get it done quick. Because don't wait for the oil light to come on.
She should probably
remember this, Norm. You remember this talk?
Shut up.
You know when the oil light comes on, it's already too late.
I took a picture one time. I posted on Facebook. In fact, every single light on the dashboard was on. It was my little Christmas collection of Christmas tree ornaments. Well, she should probably just give that car to me, I would think. Yeah. But I mean, you can get the cable replaced. No?
Yeah, you can get it replaced. Yeah.
Probably not super expensive.
The hardest part is just getting the hood open. That's the hardest part. Hopefully, the cable's just stretched, and then what they can do is they can grab it with a pair of pliers underneath the dash and yank on it and get the hood open one more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a question from Curmudgeon Rick. I guess he's from New Paltz. He says, why do some people turn into complete assholes when they get behind the wheel of a car? He continues, why is it so difficult to signal a turn or change lanes? And is it really necessary to use your horn to say hello to somebody that you see walking nearby when you're in your car? Is this maybe for a therapist? What he should do,
he should go. I'm sure if you go online, you can find it. Disney made a movie about that very thing. Right?
Yeah.
And Pluto's in the house. And he's like, Pluto. Right? And he gets in the car and he starts the car up and he starts backing out and he stops smiling. Right? He gets out on the road and he starts growing fangs. And he says,
it happens to me.
Yeah. Some people, what's insane is that a lot of people lose their patience when they're in a car.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't do it walking someplace. They wouldn't, because car gives you a little, it's not as bad as the internet, but it's kind of like, chances are they're not going to know who you are, right?
Yeah.
And they do stupid stuff. It's just crazy.
Right.
Yeah. The biggest deal is make the traffic flow.
Yeah.
Like if you're stopping at a light and a person's trying to get out, let them go out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let them go out. It's not a problem.
Yeah, behave
Are
as
you
if-
really that fast, that bad, that you're that late, that's going to make a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and stuff. All right. He also
That's how a lot of accidents happen, by the way.
people just being impatient jerks.
Yes.
He also has a follow-on question. Rear spoilers, what the fuck? Yeah.
Most of the rear spoilers on the car are just to, it's to make the guys feel good. It's like, I got
just
a
for
spoiler
show.
on my car. For the average car, yes. Okay.
See, now I want to go put spoilers on Fred's cars as a prank.
We put wings on the cars we drive, right?
Uh-huh.
But those are to give down pressure. Okay. So like we'll have wings that will, when we get over 50 miles an hour, we'll have 1,000 pounds of down pressure. So when you go to make a corner, you have 1,000 pounds of down pressure, extra 1,000 pounds on the wheels. Okay. But when you go to make the corner, you're only changing direction of 910 pounds. So you can make insanely fast corners. Okay.
Nice.
But you have to be going fast to do that. Like to make a wing that would actually make a difference at say 60 miles an hour. No.
Okay.
That's just to make them feel good.
So-
I'm driving a race
so
car.
rear
I got a wing.
So rear spoilers are just for show.
Most of them are just, yeah.
All right. Leslie H. Writes in, Jeff's car makes a knocking sound between first and second gear. What in the world could that be?
I have a million questions.
Yeah, well, this was
is
all...
it a standard? Is it an automatic?
Is
Is it
all the info I got.
What are the RPMs when they do this?
All right, we'll save that for next time.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll agree to come back.
Sure.
Eric S., you had a question, Eric. We're going to Roy D. How long should a battery last on a hybrid?
Battery on a hybrid, they're also 10 years. Okay, they're 10 years. However, with a hybrid, when the battery starts to die, it still goes. Okay, it's just the efficiency drops off. Okay, versus a plug-in, when the battery dies, you can go 50 miles. That's
Right.
it. So that's why I recommend the hybrids way over a plug-in at this point.
And for your own personal car, do you drive a hybrid?
No.
Okay. What's Tiffany M. from up in Hudson says, how about what's your favorite, most reliable all-wheel drive and why?
Well, it depends what you're going to do with it. I mean, if you're just driving around and you want all-wheel drive, first of all, why do you want all-wheel drive?
I think she's a drug dealer and she works in all four seasons.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is, the first thing to do is to sit down and say, do I really need all-wheel drive?
Right.
In other words, when we get, like, say, 1.5 feet of snow, do I say, I'm going to go for a ride? Okay? Most people, no.
No.
Okay? I had someone I know who had to have all-wheel drive, right? If there was 2 inches of snow on the ground, I had to go pick her up because she wouldn't drive to work.
Oh.
Okay? So it's just kind of like all-wheel drive does two things. It costs you a lot more money. It costs you more money when you buy it. It costs you more money in tires. Okay? And it costs a lot in energy. The same car without four-wheel drive will probably do about 25% better in gas mileage.
And do all-wheel drive cars give you an option? Can you shift into just like front-wheel
It
drive?
doesn't make any difference. It's there.
Okay.
It's
All right.
there.
I think we've got time for one last question, and it's going to be another question from loyal listener Amy H. What happens if your electric car runs out of juice? Does AAA carry a generator or something? What the hell do you do?
You're stuck. They tow it.
You tow it.
The amount of energy it takes to charge a battery plug-in is insane. Right? They would have to have like a huge generator.
Right.
A huge generator.
Yeah.
And if they charge it, the plugins do two different ways. They do like a fast charge. Like if you have a Tesla charger. The Tesla charger uses so much current, 220 won't cover it. It's 440.
Right.
Okay. So you're not going to have a generator like that. So usually what they do is they put them on a flatbed and take them to a charger.
Right.
Yeah.
Gads. Do you think they could ever have a solar-powered car?
No, qualify that. Qualify that. If I let it sit in the sun for like 6 months, I could drive it 50 miles.
Yeah. All right. We'll take that as your answer. And we're out of time. And thank you so much for coming.
Awesome.
Mark Van De Carr. Everybody have a wonderful Friday evening. Thanks for tuning in.
Drive safe.
Drive safe.
Don't drive like
Mark.
Don't drive like like my brother.
I've driven with you. Oh, yeah.
Driven.
You drive with your brother.
Yes, I do.
You do.
Yes, we do.
Which one is a better driver?
It depends.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
I usually beat him.
Have a good. That's not an answer.
Yeah.
Good night.